with it.
That sounds like what I'm going through right now. We're going through a branding or changing our name.
Right.
And my director asked me to buy all these these domain names.
Yep.
Like, I think I've bought like 15 of them. So, what do I do with these things?
Well, first of all, if they're brand new domain names and they're not referenced anywhere on the web and they're not in any of your marketing materials, I don't even know whether I do anything with them, because you're not going to get a lot of value from doing 301s against them, because the reason people do 301s is to take advantage of the link structures that have already been pointing to old pages, right? The idea is I used to have a site here, and now I've got a different site, and some people bookmarked my old pages, or some people linked to my old pages, and I don't want them to get error messages when they come to the new site. So the way I do that is with a 301 command. There's actually probably a good segue to talk about a couple of books that you might want to consider. There's all sorts of books out there that are available. Some of them for immediate purchase, because we have some, sort of in inventory, and others you can, if you don't want to carry them around with you, you can actually, there's order forms that will give out during lunch, which will allow you to order them as well. So for organic SEO, Shari Thoreau wrote Search Engine Visibility. So it's got probably a whole section on 301 redirects. I bet you if I look in the index, I don't know if I'd look under T for 3 or look under pre-A. They've got a 404, but not a 301. Let me look under redirect. Yeah, she's got 2 pages in here just on redirects. So, it gets a little bit more in detail. But if you really have that issue where you're trying to decide to sort of consolidate domain names together or whatever, if you just Google 301 redirect, there will be tons of information on how to do it, why to do it, when to do it, particularly on Webmaster World, which is an online discussion forum about, heavily about search engine marketing. But you may want to consider getting Shari Thoreau's book if your primary reason for being here is organic or natural search. She goes into a lot of how-to, step-by-step stuff. For paid search, Catherine Seda, or Kat Seda, wrote Search Engine Advertising, which really focuses more on paid search. So between the two of these, you can pretty much cover a lot of the stuff that we're talking about today in even more detail than I'll be able to cover in 2 days. So if you sort of want to have additional reference material when you go back, I highly recommend these books. I mean, I was lucky enough, I know the authors, I got them for free, but I would have purchased them. Actually, I have purchased one of each as well for my team. So you may want to consider this. There's actually also a bundle of, I think 4 books out there that they've got a discount price on that includes both of these and a couple of other books as well. So, knowing that the Yahoo spider is visited, it announces itself, it asks for the robots.txt file, and then it starts to crawl through your site. So sometimes it'll visit, only ask for one page, and it won't crawl any further, and you might be sort of bummed. You're like, there were 15 links off of my homepage. How come it didn't go past that? Well, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it just comes and takes a snapshot of what it found there, and then it adds those other link pages to visit later. So you can't get too upset if you don't see it rummaging through your entire site right away. Some of them are more likely to rummage. The MSN spider likes to rummage right away, so it tends to follow links right away, and you'll see it be fairly aggressive. Yahoo, not so much. Same thing. MSN and Google, they announce themselves, then they start to ask for content, and they'll dig down through your site. The other interesting thing that's in your log files and in your web analytics package is there's the IP address, which can be looked up, right? You can actually look up to see who's assigned to that IP address, because every IP address is assigned to essentially an owner, meaning an ISP or a company, and that's sort of the person that's using that IP address. So when you see that IP address show up in your log files, you can look back to see who that was. So I picked 3 IP addresses out of our log file, and these are the engines that they came in off of, right? Which doesn't relate to the IP address. It just happens to be the last place they were right before they visited. And I did an Aaron lookup, and I found that one person was from some router in State Farm. Another person was from a company called XP Systems that does software development. And the third was from Boeing Satellite Systems. I mean, did any of these people fill out any information on my site to let me know that this is where they're from? No. But it's interesting that I could tell that based on their IP address. When you're in a B2B environment, we don't get a lot of visitors, but who the visitors are is very important to you. Sometimes running your log files through an ARIN lookup can be very useful, just in understanding who's visiting your site. If they happen to be folks who are in your target audience, if I was Siebel and I sold $200,000 Salesforce automation at the low end, and I saw that somebody from State Farm had visited my site, even though they hadn't filled out a lead form, I might call a sales team and say, hey, somebody from State Farm was here. They're not a customer of ours right now, but maybe you should give them a call. I don't know who to call because it was just somebody from State Farm. Is that super valuable or not valuable at all? And I don't know. It's going to depend on your individual companies, of course, but I just find it sort of fascinating and somewhat useful that you can, in fact, on a visitor-by-visitor basis, look up to see who's there. There are also some, yep?
If it's a relatively smaller company, like us, and we're behind like a router firewall, just going through a service, then our name won't show up.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's only the very large companies that actually get the IP addresses assigned to them in ARIN. But you can usually tell what ISP they came through. So if you connect to the internet through Verizon or Time Warner, Roadrunner, or whatever, they'll be able to tell that, but they won't be able to tell who you are specifically. But it usually gives geography information, so that's useful for either direction. The directories, we talked a little bit about the fact that your listings could show up in organic results based on either a directory or the spider. Directories are run by humans, right? A human decides what category you belong in, whether or not the title that you submitted is appropriate for you or not, whether or not the description you submitted is appropriate for you or not. Yahoo charges $300 a year to be in their directory unless you're like a nonprofit or educational institution. So for all the commercial categories, they charge $300 a year. Is it worth it? For most people, it's worth it. It's not necessarily worth it for everybody, but at $300 a year, having the combination of the direct traffic from people who happen to navigate through the directory structure, plus the link relevance from having a link out of Yahoo to you is usually worth it. I talked a little bit about DMOZ earlier. DMOZ is the open directory, so that's dmoz.org. The interesting thing about dmoz.org is it's run by volunteers. So each volunteer runs one category. So there's like a category editor for the Persian cat page, and there's also a category editor for antivirus software. So these category editors are in charge of keeping their particular categories up to date. Do they do so? Usually not, because they're volunteers. They don't get paid. But all the search engines actually use this DMOZ database, which they can access for free, to sort of supplement the information that they have about sites. So given that there's no cost, other than the aggravation of submitting and not showing up because the editor hasn't logged in the last 6 months, there's not a lot of cost in being in DMOZ. So I do recommend that you try to at least get in there. How hard you try and whether you try to escalate to the sort of supervisor of the editor, because there's an editor hierarchy there. So if you can't get in based on the editor, you can try to find the meta editor for the category and escalate it. It could be quite exasperating, but if you can get into DMOZ, it's pretty useful. Your business might have vertical directories or portals, so being in there, if they've got a free listing submission program, that potentially you may want to see if they've got one, a free one or not. Some of them have free ones, some of them don't.